Sheriff Chris Nanos says that he is confident the Nancy Guthrie case will be solved. This comes 1 month after Guthrie was last seen.
12 News journalist Jade Cunningham has more on what he says about this investigation. And there were some other developments as well, Jade, today.
People hoping this case will have a resolution, including the Guthrie family and Sheriff Nanos, saying he is confident that that again would happen. Now, today, for the first time, we saw Savannah and her sister Annie outside their mom's home. And this is video from News Nation showing an emotional moment as the two, along with Savannah's brother-in-law, were seen carrying yellow flowers down Guthrie's driveway. They were walking arm in arm, taking a moment to look at the memorial that's just been growing near Guthrie's mailbox. People have been leaving letters, yellow flowers and other items in honor of Nancy Guthrie with the hopes that she'd soon be found. And they too left their flowers before embracing each other.
They did not say a word, but listen closely, because there is one specific number in this nightmare that will haunt you once you know it. Forget the $6 million Bitcoin ransom. Forget the $1 million reward put up by the family. It is not the 13,000 tips flooding the FBI, and it is not the 400 agents swarming the case at the height of the manhunt. The number that matters is 72, as in hours. A veteran detective, a guy who built his entire reputation hunting down missing people and started the NYPD's K-9 unit, just went on record with a chilling conclusion. Nancy Guthrie was likely dead within 72 hours of vanishing. 3 days, that is it. But I'm not going to spill his whole theory just yet. To really grasp the weight of that number, you have to walk the exact same trail of evidence he did. You have to look at the cold, hard medical charts. You need to listen to a heart specialist explain exactly what happens to an 84-year-old woman when you rip her away from her cardiac meds cold turkey. You need to hear what a former Fed and a CIA operative figured out about the contents of that backpack. And then, you need to pull up a map, because this same expert did not just give us a time limit, he gave us a radius. Now, this is the part that stopped me cold. I had to read his statement 3 times to make sure I was not seeing things. Every single scrap of hard proof found so far, the gloves, the search warrants executed, the grainy video, the DNA hits, the search zones, everything lands smack in the middle of the window he pinpointed. Call it a coincidence if you want, or call it the moment the fog finally lifts. Let's dive in. Nancy Guthrie is 84. You probably know her daughter, Savannah Guthrie, the co-anchor of NBC's Today Show. Nancy calls a quiet patch of the Catalina foothills home, just north of Tucson, Arizona. CNN paints it as isolated. No streetlights to guide you, neighbors few and far between, and barely any cameras. On January 31st, her family dropped her off after dinner, around 9:30 or 9:45 p.m. Sheriff Chris Nanos said her mind was still razor sharp, sharp as a tack, he called it. But her body was failing her. She had trouble moving around, lived with chronic pain, relied on a pacemaker, and popped pills daily for her heart. And here is the kicker, the one detail that dictates how this whole thing plays out. Sheriff Nanos laid it out for the public. If Nancy goes 24 hours without those meds, it is not just risky, it is not just complications, it is fatal. Lock that in your mind, 24 hours. Because the expert I am bringing in believes she barely had 72, and even that is an optimistic guess. Sometime after the clock struck midnight on February 1st, a visitor came knocking. At 1:47 a.m., the doorbell cam suddenly died. Surveillance footage released later shows a masked figure intentionally blinding the lens with a handful of weeds ripped right from the yard. This was not random. They knew the camera was watching, and they knew how to blind it. 25 minutes later, at 2:12 a.m., a motion sensor inside the house flagged a person, but the video feed failed to record. Then, at 2:28 a.m., 16 minutes after the break-in, Nancy's pacemaker pinged her iPhone for the very last time. The phone stayed in the house. Nancy did not. That 41-minute gap from 1:47 to 2:28, that is the whole ballgame. Whatever nightmare Nancy walked into happened in that tight window, right there on the front porch, the main way in and out. Police found blood there, and the lab confirmed it. It was Nancy Guthrie's. A forensic pathologist studied photos of the spatter. He noted the drops looked like donuts, small with pale centers, which usually means blood dripping from the nose or mouth, mixing with air as it falls. He said it matches the story of a violent struggle during a snatch and grab. Nancy left her blood on her own doorstep, and then she vanished into the night. That was 31 days ago, and in that entire month, Nobody has offered a shred of proof that she is still breathing. No proof of life photo, no audio recording, not a scribbled note. Zero. Enter Michael Gould. The guy is a former lieutenant out of Nassau County. He is the brain behind the NYPD's K-9 unit. The elite squad they call when people go missing and need to be found, dead or alive. This guy built his entire reputation on tracking down the missing. But let's get one thing straight right off the bat. He isn't an FBI profiler, and he sure isn't an agent. He isn't on the payroll for this investigation. The Times, International Business Times, ran a deep dive on his analysis and made that distinction crystal clear. Think of him as the ultimate outsider, an expert looking in, using his professional chops and public intel rather than classified case files. But don't mistake him for some armchair detective playing guessing games from his living room. This is a veteran who has worked the trenches on these exact types of cases. The guy leading teams into the unknown. He's the one standing there in the dirt when the mission shifts from bringing them home to bringing back a body. He sat down for an exclusive with the Times, Mirror US Times, and dropped 2 bombshells that, in my opinion, completely flipped the script on this case. First up, the hard truth. His read is that Nancy likely passed away within the first 72 hours. And this is going to end as a recovery mission. Let's unpack that for a second. Sadly, that isn't just cold clinical talk. That is a man who knows exactly how heavy those words land on a family. He calls it an assessment, not a hunch, not a Reddit conspiracy theory, a professional evaluation from a guy with decades of skin in the game. Nancy Times likely times died. Not maybe, not could've. And the timeline? Within the first 72 hours. That timeline puts the cutoff at February 3rd, 3 days after January 31st. That's before the cops even released that doorbell video. Before TMZ got wind of a ransom note. Before most of the country even knew who Nancy Guthrie was, the clock had already run out. And he says she will be times recovered asterisk, not rescued. When the founder of a specialized recovery unit uses that word, you need to understand the gravity behind it. He kept going, saying, "Recovery doesn't bring closure. It simply removes the uncertainty of not knowing where she is." God, that hits hard. Then came the second bombshell, the geography. Historically speaking, abduction victims are usually found close to the origin point 2 to 5 miles out. He believes Nancy's remains are likely sitting within just a few miles of her front door. I want to break this down the same way. Historically. Again, he isn't throwing darts at a map. He is pulling from a massive data set of past cases, patterns from kidnappings he has personally studied and worked on. We are talking close proximity here. She isn't across state lines. She isn't in another city. She isn't in Mexico. We are looking at a specific 2 to 5 mile radius. He isn't pointing a finger at some hideout in Arizona. He is telling us she is 2 to 5 miles from the very spot she was snatched. Nancy's body is likely just a few miles from home. That house in the Catalina foothills, the one with the doorbell cam, the house with the bloodstains on the porch, the place her kids dropped her off after dinner on January 31st. She didn't go far. That is the message. She is close. And Gould added one more detail I haven't even touched on yet regarding the odds. In an earlier chat with the Times Mirror US asterisk, he estimated there was less than a 10% chance Nancy Guthrie was still breathing. 10%. And that was weeks ago. With this latest update, he blew past that estimate, laying out a concrete timeline and location for what he sees as the inevitable ending. He even called out the $1 million reward. I believe the reward money is an effort to recover Nancy's body and bring answers to the family, not to rescue her, to recover her body. That is the voice of experience telling you how these nightmares usually end. 2 numbers, 72 hours, 2 to 5 miles. Here is why I think you need to pay attention to those figures more than any other wild theory floating around. Gould didn't just pull 72 hours out of thin air. He based it on a medical reality that law enforcement has already verified. Nancy has a pacemaker. She is on a strict daily regimen for an undisclosed heart condition. We are talking antiarrhythmics, blood thinners, and hypertension meds. According to reports, her daughter said she lives in constant agony, even times with the medication. And the Pima County Sheriff went on record on day 4, stating that missing those pills for more than 24 hours could be a death sentence. Savannah Guthrie said it herself in that Instagram video. Her mom is 84. Her health, her heart, it's fragile. She is in constant pain, and she is out there with zero medicine. She needs it to survive. She needs it just to keep from suffering. A source close to the family told CNN that Nancy is in grave jeopardy without those prescriptions. Now, Dr. Srihari S. Naidu, a professor of medicine at New York Medical College, gave an exclusive to Times Parade Times breaking down exactly what happens when a heart patient goes cold turkey. He isn't on the case, but his analysis is the most comprehensive medical deep dive we have seen. He laid out 3 categories of heart medication. First, you have preventative blood thinners to stop strokes. Stopping those suddenly, it isn't an instant killer. The stroke risk for high-risk patients sits at about 5% a year. It's not like you skip a dose and have a stroke the next morning. The second category is chronic disease management blood pressure pills. Quitting those spikes your risk, sure, but it doesn't guarantee an immediate crisis. The third category, though, that is the one that keeps you up at night. These are the medications that actively keep the heart beating. Dr. Naidu didn't mince words about stopping those meds cold turkey. It hits fast and it hits hard. And look, unless you are her doctor or sitting at the family dinner table, nobody knows exactly what cocktail of pills she was on. But we have the sheriff on record saying 24 hours without them is a death sentence. That isn't some internet rumor or podcast theory. That is coming straight from the guy running the show, the one man who has actually seen her medical charts. So, let's break down the math. You have the sheriff drawing the line at 24 hours. Then you have Gould saying 72 hours is the absolute point of no return. That 48-hour buffer? That is Gould giving the best-case scenario, betting on her fighting spirit, assuming her heart and that pacemaker worked overtime to keep her going. But once you cross that 72-hour mark, 3 days with 0 antiarrhythmic drugs, 0 blood pressure control, deprived of the very chemistry keeping that pacemaker-dependent heart beating, we aren't asking whether she survived anymore. The only question left is how long she suffered. We are on day 31, 744 hours. That is 31 times longer than the window the sheriff called lethal. Dr. Naidu also cleared up a major misconception people have about how these devices actually work. This is crucial for understanding the signal hunt I am about to cover. A pacemaker isn't an autonomous engine. It is a safety net. It fires off electrical jolts to stop the heart rate from bottoming out. But here is the grim reality. If the patient dies, the machine keeps firing impulses into a heart that has already stopped. The electricity comes from the battery, not the body. And that distinct electronic signature is why investigators tried a Hail Mary play. CBS News broke the story that police rigged a helicopter with a signal sniffer, flying low and slow over the Tucson scrubland, trying to pick up a ping from her specific device. The logic was simple. Even if they moved Nancy, that little box might still be broadcasting a signal that would pinpoint her grave. They took to the air. They swept the grid. They came up empty. Now, I want you to layer Gould's 72-hour deadline over the actual timeline of this case. If the abduction went down at 2:28 in the morning on February 1st, and Gould's math holds up, the clock ran out around 2:28 in the morning on February 4th. We are talking about a Tuesday morning. The public didn't see that doorbell video until February 10th. That is 6 full days after the survival window had already slammed shut. TMZ didn't get the first ransom letter until February 9th, 5 days too late. The FBI didn't drop the $100,000 reward until February 13th. Most of the country didn't even know Nancy Guthrie existed until days after Gould believed she was already dead. The ransom demands, the tearful pleas, the reward posters if Gould is right, all of it was theater performing to an empty room. The outcome was already decided, not by a criminal, but by basic biology. Enter Sam Bassett, a heavy-hitter criminal defense attorney. This guy is a Lawyer of the Year recipient, and he dropped a quote to the Mirror U.S. that stopped me cold. He was analyzing those media ransom notes and said, "The ransom, dropping over time, may indicate their desperation, and possibly worse, if Mrs. Guthrie's health took a turn." Think about that. Price drops. Panic. A turn for the worse. If Gould's theory holds water, the sender was watching her fade away in real time. They were lowering the price because they had no leverage left. But here is the detail that makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up. That first demand went to TMZ and 2 local TV stations. Not the husband, not a private email. They went straight to the press. It asked for $6 million in Bitcoin, but gave 0 instructions on how to pay. No return address, no burner number, no drop site. A ransom demand you cannot answer isn't a negotiation. It is a press release. One more message came through, and then radio silence. By mid-February, the FBI confirmed the line was dead. No ongoing chatter between the family and any abductor. Deadlines came and went. The price crashed. Then, nothing. If that 72-hour clock is real, those notes were mailed by a ghost. They weren't trying to get paid. They were buying time. Now, let's talk about geography. This is where Gould's theory stops sounding like a guess and starts looking like the hard truth the evidence has been screaming since week 1. Statistically, you don't find abduction victims across state lines. You find them close to home, usually within a 2 to 5 mile radius. Chances are, she is within a few miles of her front door. 2 to 5 miles. Let's take a look at what is actually sitting inside that radius. The feds picked up a pair of black gloves about 2 miles out, tossed in a field off the road. They looked like a dead ringer for the ones the masked man wore in the doorbell video. Lab techs pulled DNA, but it came back to an unknown male. No hit in the CODIS system. Sheriff Nanos tried to downplay it, saying, "I have gloves 5 miles away, 10 miles away, so we prioritize." But guess what? They tested the 2-mile gloves first. That tells you exactly where they think the body is. Then there is a ring camera sitting about 2.5 miles from the Guthrie place. It caught 12 cars between midnight and 6 in the morning on February 1st. Some rolled through right around 2:30 in the morning, barely 2 minutes after the pacemaker sent its final signal. You better believe the FBI scrubbed every frame of that tape. Investigators ruled it a dead end. But remember, their focus was tight. We're talking a 2.5 mile radius, not 50 miles, and certainly not the Mexican border. Fast forward to February 13th, day 13 of the nightmare, and a massive law enforcement swarm descended just 2 miles from Nancy's front door. A tip triggered a search warrant, leading to multiple detainments. One guy they cut loose made it crystal clear to the cameras, "I hope they catch the monster, 'cause it ain't me." Ultimately, no handcuffs went on that day. But the fact remains, that warrant was executed just 2 miles out. Deputies from the sheriff's department hit the pavement, knocking on every door within a 2-mile zone to hunt for security footage. They weren't just looking at the week of the crime. They demanded tapes dating back to New Year's Day, a full month before the abduction. That wide net speaks volumes. Detectives were convinced this predator had been lurking in the shadows for weeks before snatching Nancy. And this is where the geography calls out the premeditation. Major networks broke the story, later confirmed across the board that the masked phantom wasn't a one-time visitor. Nancy's own doorbell caught him on 2 separate occasions. You have the terrifying night of footage backpack on, gun on the hip. Then, a chilling earlier clip. Same guy, same porch, but traveling light. John Miller, a heavy hitter in intelligence who has served as both an NYPD deputy commissioner and an FBI assistant director, didn't mince words. He called it exactly what it was: pre-operational surveillance reconnaissance. This guy was prowling the neighborhood before February 1st. If the theory holds that he disposed of the body nearby, then the stalking, the snatch, and the aftermath all occurred within a tight 5-mile ring around the Guthrie residence. Lab results from the scene came back messy. It's a mixed DNA profile with multiple contributors, which makes getting a database hit a nightmare. Authorities stated their private lab down in Florida is still grinding away at the biological evidence, but the verdict is still out on whether that DNA is even good enough to compare. So, they're pivoting to the nuclear option: genetic genealogy. It's the same breakthrough tech that finally unmasked the Golden State Killer after he dodged justice for decades. Here's the kicker: the bad guy doesn't need to be in the system. You upload the sample to public ancestry sites, find a distant cousin, and start pruning the family tree until he's the only one left. It's not a quick fix, and you need a clean sample. But this method has solved mysteries that sat on the shelf for 40 years. Peter Valentine, top brass in forensic science at the University of New Haven, warns against tunnel vision. He thinks the smoking gun might not be DNA at all. If intruders breached that house, physics demands they left something behind. Valentine is shouting for a deeper look at microscopic evidence, stray hairs and fibers that are easily missed. Now, let's talk about the Guthrie family. Make no mistake, detectives absolutely grilled the inner circle. That is always step 1, and you can bet it happened here. But that's just standard operating procedure. In any homicide investigation, you start at the breakfast table. Who saw her last? Is there bad blood? Any secrets? You hunt for a motive immediately. Best case, you solve it. Worst case, you rule them out and clear the deck. Once that box is checked, you widen the lens. You know, Jonathan, we were just analyzing the profiler insights from that recent segment. It is crazy how often the answer lies in the subtle details. Sometimes it's not a fingerprint or a witness that cracks the case, it's behavioral analysis. That psychological read can change everything. It might be something as small as the suspect's posture, or how they pivot when they walk. Take that holster placement, for example. Carrying the weapon right up front like that? That's a power move. It screams intimidation. He's making sure everyone knows he's packing heat. We've discussed how tactically sloppy that setup is, but he wasn't trying to impress a SWAT team. We aren't who he was performing for. That display was for an audience of one, Nancy Guthrie. 2 miles for the gloves, 2 miles for the warrant, 2.5 for the camera hit. The answer is hiding in that 2 to 5 mile radius. If the experts are right that she was killed within 72 hours and never left that 5 mile zone, we have to ask, what was the endgame? What was the plan? 3 separate experts looked at the evidence blindly, and they all came to the same chilling conclusion. Tracy Walder, a veteran of both the C, I, A, and the F, B, I, weighed in. While analyzing the footage, she zeroed in on that backpack. In the video, it looked heavy, rigid, and packed to the brim. Her take? He walked up to that door with a kidnap kit. She suspects he was carrying restraints, and possibly tarps or blankets to wrap the body. It's a grim thought, but she believes that bag was loaded with zip ties and duct tape tools meant to incapacitate. That was no burglary toolkit. Walder is convinced he didn't come to steal. He came to take her. You rarely see a burglar dragging a victim out the door with them. It just doesn't happen. Human cargo slows you down. And she suggested a reason why. My gut tells me this was personal, someone with a vendetta against Savannah Guthrie or a dark obsession with her. That explains the precision. This family was singled out. It's way too specific. You don't just stumble onto a property like this and decide to hit it. That's not what went down here. Crime Scene Pro Cheryl McCollum broke it down on Fox News. Look at the guy. His backpack is already fully loaded. That is not a home invasion. You kick in a door to find cash, drugs, or jewelry. You don't show up with a full bag if you're planning to fill it with loot. She noted that if things had gone sideways during a robbery, Nancy would be lying on the floor right there in the home. But the house was empty. Someone took her. Walder also zoomed in on the gear in the suspect's pocket. She thinks it's a walkie-talkie for staying in touch with a wheelman. She's betting the guy went analog, no cell phone. If he had a phone, he'd be in cuffs by now. No signal, no digital breadcrumbs, radio comms, a bag packed with restraints, surveillance, a weapon. This was a mission. Digital forensics specialist Heather Barnhart, a veteran of the Kohberger investigation with top-tier certs from Celebrite and Sands, laid it out. Cops hunt for weird blips in cell tower traffic near the crime scene. The FBI's elite cellular team has been scrubbing the data near Nancy's place. But if Walder is right, and he left his mobile at home, that whole road leads to a dead end. No pings, no tracking history, zero indication of where he went after stepping off that porch. That is not a panicked thief. That is counter-surveillance. It's a calculated move to wipe his electronic footprint because he knew the signals would be the first thing we chased. Retired Fed Jennifer Coffendaffer spotted the same tactical blueprint. When news of the 2 visits dropped, she went public. This guy feels exactly like a Brian Kohberger type. Kohberger, the man convicted of slaughtering 4 Idaho students, stalked his victim's house well before the murders. The operational pattern is a match. Watch the target, learn the alarms, show up with a specific kit, and strike. But the target of this strike was an 84-year-old woman who couldn't last 24 hours without her heart pills. That is the fatal crash point Gould's 72-hour timeline highlights. A tactical abduction smashing into a medical reality the kidnapper ignored. The suspect brought gear to manage a living hostage. But that hostage was a ticking clock, and biology doesn't care about your plan. Now, there is a massive conflict at the heart of this investigation. On March 2nd, Sheriff Chris Nanos told NBC he personally believes Nancy is still out there. He claims they're closing the net. That same day, Michael Gould drops a bomb. She likely died within the first 3 days. They can't both be right. But Nanos sees files that Gould can't touch. Classified leads, raw forensics, hidden video, transcripts. Maybe he knows something we don't. Maybe there's a witness, Maybe there's proof she got medical help on the quiet, but the evidence we can see, it tells a grim story. 31 days of silence. No photos, no audio tapes, not a single ransom note. Savannah pleaded on national TV. We need proof. Show us she's breathing. Show us you have her. Talk to us. We're listening. We got the message. Please, just give us our mom back so we can hold her again. That is the only way this ends in peace. She means everything to us. We will pay. The response? Absolute silence. In any real kidnapping for leverage, proof of life is the golden ticket. Silence isn't just weird. If you believe Gould, that silence is the loudest clue we have. The feds flew a chopper low and slow with a signal sniffer, hunting for the pulse of her pacemaker. They came up empty. 13,000 tips led nowhere. The DNA might be a bust. The FBI has pulled its main force back to Phoenix. Pima County Sheriff's Department is shifting gears, assigning detectives for the long haul. Retired agent Maureen O'Connell says this won't go cold, thanks to the $1 million bounty. She thinks an accomplice might flip to grab the cash. Put yourself in their shoes. We can't talk. We'll go to jail. O'Connell broke it down on the Brian Enton Investigates podcast. Sure, one guy goes down for the crime, but we all know the game. If the sidekick sings and gives up the trigger man, he walks free and he walks away a millionaire. We're holding on. We're praying for that 1 in a million shot. We haven't let go of the idea that she's walking back through that door. It's a desperate kind of faith. Like my sister put it, we're fanning a dying flame, trying to keep it alive. But deep down, we know the darkness is creeping in. We have to face the fact that she might not be with us anymore. She might have already crossed over, back to the good Lord she adored, rejoicing up there with Mom, Dad, and our sweet brother Pierce. If that's the hand we've been dealt, we'll find a way to make peace with it. But we need answers. We need closure. That's why we're putting up a massive family reward up to $1 million to bring her back. She made a sharp point. Whoever helped pull this off probably isn't seeing a dime near that size from the mastermind. Think about it, hired muscle usually works for scraps. Maybe $2,500? Who knows how cheap they sold their soul for? Law enforcement isn't buying the lone wolf theory. Read between the lines. The cops are convinced there's a second player on the board, someone else walking around carrying this secret. They are yanking on every single loose thread they can find. Take that bag, a 25-liter Ozark Trail hiking pack. Cheap, sold only at Walmart for under $11. Detectives are combing through months of receipts, trying to track down who bought it. Then there's the gun holster. It's got distinct markings, so agents have been hitting every firearm dealer in Tucson looking for a match. You can almost see the outline of a ring under the guy's glove in those FBI snapshots. But here we are, 31 days later, and none of those clues have given us a suspect. A full month gone, and not a shred of proof that Nancy is still breathing. Savannah knows the score. On day 24, she spoke the sentence that breaks a child's heart. She admitted her mother might be lost to them forever. She acknowledged that Nancy might have already joined the angels, reuniting with her parents and Pierce in the hereafter. She told the world, "If this is our fate, we'll shoulder the burden." Then came the reward announcement. Listen closely to the verbiage. She didn't say rescue, she said recovery. Savannah has spent 20 years choosing the right words on live TV. That switch wasn't a slip of the tongue. The expert told the press that this money signals the end of the line for leads. It means the family has swallowed the bitter pill that Nancy is likely gone. Then he dropped a truth bomb that everyone needs to let sink in. Prayers keep you human, but cold hard facts are what solve cases. Eventually, you have to let reality override your wishes. Changing the language doesn't mean you love them less. It means you're respecting the truth. It's not giving up, it's waking up. And today marks day 31. Michael Gould, the guy who built the NYPD K-9 unit and spent a lifetime hunting the missing, thinks Nancy was likely killed within the first 72 hours. He predicts they'll find her remains within a tight 2 to 5 mile radius of the house. In his book, the time for rescue is over. It's purely a recovery operation now. The search and rescue phase has officially gone dark. They aren't looking for a person anymore. They're looking for a crime scene. But Gould flagged something else about those ransom demands that I haven't touched on yet. That $6 million demand sent to the tabloids, the messages that cut off just as fast as they began. He pointed out the obvious. If this were real, the family has the cash. They would have paid. But with zero proof of life, and the sloppy way they reached out, it screams fake to an experienced eye. Coming from a guy who's worked real kidnappings, that says a lot. He's convinced those notes were a complete hoax. He thinks the deal was doomed from the start because there was no one left to trade for. That's a gut-wrenching thing to say. I don't know if he's right, God. I hope he's wrong. But you've got former feds and CIA spooks saying this was personal. Not a robbery gone wrong, but a hit, driven by obsession, or maybe vengeance against Savannah. CSI experts are looking at that stuffed backpack and saying it proves intent. He came prepared to grab a human, not silverware. Heart specialists warn that quitting those meds cold turkey is a death sentence. Even the sheriff admitted back on day 4 that 24 hours without her pills could be the end. That clock ran out 27 days ago. Look at the map. The gloves found 2 miles out. The warrant served at the 2-mile mark. The doorbell footage at 2.5 miles. It all lands smack in the middle of Gould's kill zone, that 2 to 5 mile radius. The circle is tightening right around the neighborhood. I don't know who has the right theory, but I'm praying the sheriff pulls a rabbit out of the hat. I'm still hoping Nancy is out there breathing, and I hope that $1.2 million bounty cash, no questions asked, makes someone talk tonight. Maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, because there is a loose end, an accomplice, a nosy neighbor, a cashier who remembers selling that hiking pack, maybe a driver who spotted a weird car near the Catalina foothills at 2:30 in the morning. Someone had to see a stranger lurking where they shouldn't have been back in January. TMZ's Harvey Levan dropped a heavy detail straight from the feds. They're just waiting on that one key witness. Just one loose lip to blow this whole investigation wide open. Because right now, the ransom demands have turned into total dead air. The Bureau just made it official. The line between the family and the abductors has gone completely cold. 31 agonizing days of nothing. Then came March 2nd. Savannah, Annie, and Tom Sato linked arms and marched up to the impromptu shrine, piling up outside Nancy's place to pay their respects. They stood there reading notes from total strangers, people pouring their hearts out for a woman they don't even know. Savannah spoke up, saying, "We feel that love coming from our neighbors, from right here in Tucson, and from every corner of the nation. Please, keep those prayers coming and hold on to hope right alongside us." The reality of Nancy Guthrie's fate, where she vanished to, who grabbed her, and what went down in that critical 72-hour window following 2:28 in the morning on February 1st, that secret is locked inside someone's head right this second. It's weighing on someone's soul. Dial 1-800, call FBI. You don't have to give your name. No ID needed. And that reward money? Cold hard cash. Just one ring. That is the game changer. Quick disclaimer. Everything you're watching is commentary and analysis grounded in public records and professional insights. We are not stating Nancy Guthrie has passed away. There is zero confirmation of life or death at this stage. Michael Gould is a former lieutenant out of Nassau County, and the guy who built the NYPD K-9 unit from the ground up. What he's offering is an external perspective fueled by years of experience on the force, not inside access to the case files. Also, Sheriff Nanos is on record saying he believes Nancy is still out there breathing. Any expert takes here are just personal reads on the situation, not official rulings. And remember, everyone is innocent until proven otherwise. If you know anything about this mystery, reach out to the feds immediately at 1-800, call FBI.